All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Friday, January 7th. We are back with the Muffed Punt Podcast. I'm here with Matthew. Matthew, what's up, my man? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I got this freshly shaved face. I figure, we can probably catfish some people with the thumbnail, convince them I'm like some sophomore recruit at punter or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you got the Florida shirt on too. There's no reason for anyone out there who doesn't normally watch us to be like, "Oh, you probably play for Florida," so no big deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, Matt is sick again, so obviously thoughts and wishes with him. I think it's just he's got to get over the whole COVID thing. Hopefully he does, but he's keeping in contact, and so hopefully he'll be back soon. But we are here just like we were last week. Not much has changed. We were kind of talking before the show. We're obviously going to preview the national championship, but I mean, it's kind of to the point where we're like, hey, let's just get on the field and play it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, all right. So obviously we'll preview that. We'll go over some transfer portal stuff, minor stuff, maybe some coaching things. I don't know. We'll see if anything comes up new. And then we'll obviously go over who's entered the draft. And also, I can also do a little bit of a preview of the FCS, the Stag Bowl, that's this weekend, this Saturday. So, but today we're going to start out with a trivia question. So, who holds the record for the most net rushing yards in the college football playoff? It could be over one game or it could be over two. Not over two, but it could be one game or two net. Okay. So you would add them together. So you would think, yeah, okay.
Well, right out of the gate, I'm going to guess it's got to be someone who at least played for a national championship. I'm assuming they got two games.
Yes.
If someone got it in one game, I'd be floored.
Yeah. Good way to knock some of the contenders out of there. Good. They obviously played in two.
Well, I'll tell you this much. This time next week, it'll be Brian Robinson. But for the meantime, I want to say 2 playoff games. I mean, this is super recent, so I don't feel super strong about this, but maybe like Travis Etienne, because that Clemson team played for a championship. But
yeah, that's a good guess. The answer is Zeke. Zeke did it in the first ever playoff, 456 total rushing yards over the 2 games versus Alabama and Oregon. We will talk about Brian Robinson Jr., and obviously we'll get into that. He has a chance to maybe break it, but I guess, and we'll talk about it. But then again, this is not Cincinnati's defense that they can just maul over. So, but we'll obviously get into stuff like that. But yeah, it's weird. I mean, that means Zeke averaged like 225 yards a game, which is crazy. And the other one that's up there, there's like 2 of them that are up at the top with only playing 1 game. I believe one of them is last year's not Trevion Henderson. Why can't I think of his name? Yeah, Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon, when he like went off in the I think he had like 203 or something in last year's game. But yeah, so figure we get started with that. But let's get into a little bit some off-season roundup, before we get into previewing and going over obviously the games. But some players have entered the draft. There's been names out there. I don't think anyone has really been surprising that put his name in the draft yet. I will say Hutchinson is obviously going to enter it. Daxton Hill, the safety from Michigan, I know Kuiper likes him a lot. I'm not a huge fan of him, but he declared. So it's at the point where you're going to have to start wondering with these Michigan guys, especially like how much are they going to get back next year. But we'll see with that. Obviously, Kenny Pickett's in. Derek Stingley's in as well. I think we knew Derek Stingley was in from like the second he played 1 snap for LSU, and then I don't know if he's even played any more snaps other than his freshman year. He basically played in like 3 games, but people still love him. I like him. But yeah, he's in as well. You can mention it if I missed anybody, but I don't know. No one surprises me. I know Matt usually we do our prospects and draft with him. Who would you rather have, Hutchinson or Thibodeau, or someone else at one,
For me, it's still Thibodeau for a combination of reasons. I talked about this last year when I was comparing Rashawn Slater and Penei Sewell, which not going to take a stance on how that one turned out, just going to say. But I am always going to opt for the guy with a little more like real-time game experience than just really exciting like physical traits. And so,
well, that's not really. You're kind of back in the Hutchinson pick there, then.
I am I'm bringing it back around.
Go, cool. All right, I cut you off before you brought it back. Okay, 360. That's my bad. Go ahead.
So that's normally the direction I go in. This is kind of one of the several years in which Oregon has produced someone who looks really incredible when it comes to their measurements, but maybe hasn't got as great at coaching. So that's normally the direction I'm going to lean. But in this case, I'm going to go the opposite direction just because I don't know how valuable that Aiden Hutchinson, like game time experience really has been. I think, and I'm not going to go as far as to call this like a fluke or to say he's like ridiculously overrated, but I will say, just to be fair, that it's all swelled up fairly quickly. And it's not like we have as much of a road to look back on and decide what this guy's going to be at the next level.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with you. Usually with the game part thing, I don't know how much of Hutchinson was because he had a guy like David Ajabo on the other side of him. And you're right. It's flared up because he played against, I think, Penn State and Ohio State. He had like 6 sacks between those 2 games. So it's built up. But I just, unless it's Detroit picking one, which I think it's going to be the Jaguars again, which, I mean, they just need to get a couple number 1 picks in a row and maybe they can field the team. But, I just don't know how much I can trust Hutchinson at the next level. They're also I can't. It's not his hand size. Oh, it's his reach. I guess is like really, really like way outside of the thresholds that NFL scouts like and stuff. So while I do think he'll end up being a decent pro, I agree with you on Kayvon Thibodeau. I wouldn't take. I guess depending on how you're going to go. My probably top 2 would end up being Thibodeau and Evan Neal from Alabama. I mean, you never know with the tackles and things like that, but at worst, Evan Neal's like a 6'7" monster that like you can use somewhere. So, but yeah, no. So, I don't want to get into my whole hating Michigan and the hating Hutchinson thing, but I do think it is a fair ask at this point to say. It's swelled up to Hutchinson now, and we always kind of get this going into the draft where someone's really hyped, and then towards the end of it, it's like, oh wait, they just had a couple really good games at the end of their year, and these guys are measuring way ahead of them, blah 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 blah, and stuff like that. So I don't know, but we'll see what happens there. I just hope Thibodeau doesn't get hurt more. I know he's already got the elbow. That's a risk too. Terrible. It's not going to be a good draft. It's just not going to be a very good draft. All right. So to the transfer portal, some news from recently, especially Zach Calzada is going to Auburn. What are the other 2 I had up? Zach Calzada is going to Auburn. Running back who was a 5-star, Zach Evans, who was at TCU, is going to Ole Miss. And Dylan Gabriel flipped commitment to hit Oklahoma. All right. I mean, do any of those like move the needle for you? Those first
I've got
3?
so many feelings about everything you just said.
Good. All right. Good.
I guess I'll just go in order. Starting with Zach Calzada, that's a guy, unfortunately, on this podcast that I went out and doubted pretty early in the year. He had come out pretty strong. I wasn't sure if he was going to sustain it, and he was able to, so props to him. And it's going to be incredibly exciting to see the only quarterback who beat Alabama this year is going to be starting for Auburn next year. Even as someone with a little bit of Bama bias, like that's something I can look forward to.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I've seen reports out there that like Harson's already kind of on the hot seat because I guess the whole thing with Bo Nix, like it didn't end well. I guess I don't know. I think Harson's doing a great job. I Zach Calzada. I depend on what kind of offense Harson likes to run, but I mean Harson, not Carson, likes to run. But yeah, I like him going to Auburn very much as well. It's a place where he's probably going to step in and start. And he has SEC experience, so I think that's good for Auburn. And exactly like you said, he's already beaten Alabama. But yeah, what about Zach Evans?
This Zach Evans thing, being a Florida fan, he was kind of in the running with Florida for a little bit. And I think he even committed to Florida for like a week and then backed out. I could be wrong on that.
I don't know much about Zach Evans. I just vaguely remember like his whole recruiting thing was like it dragged on for so long. And then people I just forgot he was at TCU. So no, I just know that he was a 5-star and is now on the move after. I just remember his story. So you can keep going now.
Yeah, I remember it had seemed. I'm trying to remember these schools. I can't remember most of them, but I want to say he was looking at going to either like Texas A&M, Georgia, or Florida. It was down to something like that, and I think he at one point or another committed to each of them. So I'm not surprised at all to see this continue.
He was committed to like 5 schools last year. Okay, yes, yeah, I do. Yeah,
he was like the pre-COVID Eric Gilbert, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
And I'm not surprised to see that this is still continuing. I think it's very exciting that we could have someone of that talent at Ole Miss. I don't know how great he's going to be just considering all of the things that have been going on. And I will admit that I have not seen him play for TCU very much. I've seen maybe like a game and a half. So I'm excited, but I'm a little bit hesitant because I feel like this name should have been bigger. And not a lot of people are talking about this. And the Zach Evans that I remember, it was a huge story.
He's good. And I mean, Ole Miss had a little bit of like a decent running game this year. If Lane Kiffin can find a way to get Zach Evans like 25 carries and like touches in the pass game, that then becomes more of a balanced offense. I mean, their defense is still paper thin, but at least you have a little bit more of a balanced offense where you're not hopefully not completely leaning on one person in which is what they did with Corral. So I agree. I think I mean he had the whole recruiting thing. So I guess this is almost like his first year because I don't think he played that much at TCU last year for whatever reason. All right, and then the last one, Dylan Gabriel. He's another one where I thought I would have been following, and I don't know where. I know he's going to Oklahoma, but hasn't he been committed to 2 different schools in the transfer portal?
Yeah, so he left UCF, which is always a good decision. Just had to slip that in there. Left UCF, committed to UCLA, and then like a week later flipped his commitment to the University of Oklahoma. This was after Radler had gone into the portal, but before Caleb Williams went into the portal, I think. Which it's interesting to me that, and I don't want to put a narrative on it if it isn't there. I don't want to pull this out of thin air. But it's interesting to me to see Caleb Williams entering the portal after Dylan Gabriel showing up. Because if you ask me, that is Caleb Williams' job to lose, without a doubt. So I imagine there were definitely some bigger issues with it, or not even issues, maybe just reasons to go seek something else.
I think once Lincoln Riley was gone, I think Caleb Williams knew he wanted to get out. I mean, he just didn't seem like an Oklahoma guy, and I don't know what offense Venables is going to bring in because he's a defensive guy. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. But yeah, it's been such a weird transfer portal, and it's only going to get weirder. Which brings me to the question I just thought of. We've obviously seen it in the NBA, in the NFL, kind of, and some baseball a little bit. Where nowadays, I mean, you can kind of call Kevin Durant a mercenary. He just goes to a city for 3 years, wins a title, goes to a different city, wins a title. You know what I'm saying? Are we ever going to – well, I think we are. When are we going to get the first ever just straight up college football mercenary that his freshman year he goes in, starts, and then his sophomore year he transfers? I mean, it would be crazy, but it wouldn't shock me.
I mean, what kind of numbers has Tate Martel been putting up?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, Tate Martel, geez.
He's won something by this point, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you can even kind of already call, like, Jameson Williams is kind of already a mercenary. He went from Ohio State to Alabama. Like, there are a couple other guys, but I just like, with all the money involved in it, and like, I think it's at a good spot in college football. Like, where they're going to expand sooner rather than later, probably. And I'm happy because I think for the next 10 years, it'll be great football. But I do think down at the end, or like down in the real future, like some of this stuff, like it's just going to become a pro league, I think. But
and I think we're going to see a lot of players recruiting other players who are in the transfer portal, which adds a whole new element to this entire thing.
And even going back to the mercenary thing, I kind of was saying, I'm surprised we haven't really seen it. Like, you see it with brothers sometimes, but I'm surprised you haven't seen, like, because all these guys play against each other in 7-on-7s over the summer, I think. So, like, what's to stop, like, just for example, like Quinn Ewers, Levy, like the next highest recruit, and Travis Hunter all being like, okay, it's a group, it's a package. We're coming in 3, but you got to recruit us why it could be 3. You know what I mean? I mean, I do think that's going to be somewhere in the future. I hope I'm not alive or not paying attention anymore. But yeah, I don't know. I love when people get worked up about it and stuff like that. But it's fun. It's fun. And it's funny. It's fun that like college football is in the middle of its biggest transition, probably since like the 60s or 70s, when Army stopped being good and things like that. So. But let's get into what we came here to really talk about. That was just gossip. Let's start out with Alabama-Cincinnati. I'll let you go first. What were your thoughts on the game? Anything you want to kind of say about it, and then I'll hit it. But you're the resident SEC. I think I think you called it, and I think I kind of called it. But what were your thoughts?
A win is a win. I was a little bit worried, even though it was, I would say, a fairly dominant game. What I did worry about was I kind of saw Alabama come off the gas a little bit. And I understand that the running game was working for them and they didn't want to abandon that. And there's several factors that play into that. But the two things I worry about with this Alabama team is playing down to competition, really, and just not taking teams seriously. That was the issue when they lost to A&M. And I think I saw a little bit of that starting to bubble up with Cincinnati. So the reason I say that worries me is because going into the national championship, we have an Alabama team who is a little bit young, who has already beat this Georgia team, and there's kind of this sense outside of the program that Alabama wins the national championship and they just kind of throw it on top of the pile. And even though I don't think that's the case at all, I do worry a little bit about some of the gravity that this game might carry, because it just might not be enough and we might not get the effort that we really need to see Alabama beat Georgia the second time this season.
Yeah, I have a question once we start previewing the national championship that I'll get to. But it was a slow death. It was just a slow death for Cincinnati. Like, it wasn't a beatdown of epic proportions like we've seen Alabama put on 4 seeds before, and we've seen them put on in like SEC games. It was just a slow beatdown. Like, at no point did you ever think Alabama was really gonna like lose or even make it close. So I'll talk about Cincinnati because I got to give some of them love. Desmond Ridder wasn't good, but he wasn't. I mean, he didn't have a good enough game to help them win. He didn't throw any interceptions, so I give them credit for that. Cincinnati's offense, I don't know why, either fickle or it almost seemed like they shortened their playbook to only to a certain amount of plays that they were like, okay, these are the runs we think we can have success in, and then the other things just out the door. So I don't know. I also will say that I do think it's a problem for Alabama against Georgia that Mechie is still out and will be out. I do think that's going to be a huge hit. And I'm not going to lie, I do want to talk about Sauce Gardner, but I was looking at the stats beforehand, and I knew he played okay. But I look at the stats, and I was actually looking at the rushing numbers, but I thought I was looking at the catching numbers. So I saw Jamison Williams 1 for 18 yards. I was like, oh, like Sauce really shut him down. Like he only had one catch. It was rushing. It was for the rush. But yeah, I think their defensive backs showed they can pretty much Gardner can pretty much play with anybody. But I think this is what happened in this game is I think kind of what we all expected. Like it necessarily wasn't a beatdown. Like if you're Cincinnati, I'm not embarrassed if you're Cincinnati. Like there have been way worse teams that have gotten beat down by that way better teams as well that got beat down by Alabama like that. But yeah, it was just like it almost should have been a game where they had a running clock. They should have just got to the second half, just had a running clock. I do want to bring up Brian Robinson. You got to give him some love. A player like him may never happen again. Where you know more about him, I'm sure. He's like a junior or a senior now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to be able to ever see this again, really, because people will just transfer out in the future. But this guy waited for like 4 years at the best school. It didn't even have the best season this year. Like he'll go to the NFL next year. Didn't have the greatest season, but that just shows you that a guy that like that for Alabama just makes the difference. Like they didn't really utilize this guy a ton during the regular season. They weren't really, excuse me, a rushing team. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the Alabama, the national championship. But let's move on to the other. Unless you have anything else, I obviously I guess we'll say. I got to tell you, I don't think Bama is going to be able to run for 204 yards like they did against Cincinnati against Georgia. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, I don't know. We'll get into it. Michigan, Georgia. We both predicted this one, down pretty much to the wire. I give us credit because it seems like there were a ton of people out there that really thought Michigan could hang in this game. I said is the second Michigan beat Ohio State. I said they'll make the playoff, but they have no chance, and they had no chance. They could not run. They couldn't run the ball. It was a terrible matchup for them. Jordan Davis was just eating, literally Pac-Man, just eating their offensive linemen. Cade McNamara. I mean, that's what happens in these playoffs when you get a team like Michigan that gets in off they finally had their one season. They're getting in, but they just don't. They always have a weak link, like Cade McNamara. Cade McNamara should never be a starting quarterback in any national championship game. He was terrible. So I don't know. I'll kick it to you because once again, you're SEC. From the Big Ten side, it was an embarrassment. I know Ohio State got shut out, I think 3 or 4 years ago by Clemson 31-0. That was pretty embarrassing. This one's just as bad up there. It was 34-11, but really it was 56-0. So I don't know. You go ahead.
Well, I'll start with saying I had the pleasure of watching this game in a household full of Michigan fans.
Nice. Good.
And
good.
As someone who despises Georgia, it was nice to see it happen to someone else because it's been happening to Florida, but now it got to happen to somebody else. So I had a fantastic night. That being said, there wasn't really a lot of great football to watch. I was this weird thing was happening where J.J. McCarthy would come in for a snap or two and Cade McNamara would come in for a snap or two. And you can do those things when you have a plan, but it felt like they were just kind of throwing stuff to the wall and to see what would stick.
I'll let you get back to sorry, but it's almost like they ran before the game, all the coaches got together. They're like, all right, first drive, we're going to run these 10 plays. And if we don't score or they don't work, let's just throw all the shit at the wall. Let's throw kitchen sink, whatever. So yeah, keep going. Sorry, I cut you off.
Well, no, you're good. And in defense of Michigan, they're in their first 2 drives, they made it down the field pretty okay, especially considering who they were up against. Somewhere along the line, they just kind of tapered out, I guess. But the size disadvantage that they had on a couple of those plays I was noticing, and just the way guys were getting hit. Like Michigan guys were getting hit. Nakobe Dean was killing people.
Nakobe didn't.
I don't know how you deal with that.
Nakobe Dean's working his way himself into a top 10 pick as an off-ball linebacker, which would be insane, but I love him. He's so good. He's faster. He's faster than everybody else. It's not even like he's just so athletic. He's actually faster than everyone else. Keep going. I don't know. I cut you off.
That was really the end of what I had.
Yeah, no, it was over before it started. If you're Georgia, you got to feel good about Stetson Bennett, I guess. You got to feel good. He played well. We'll have to see. Let's just move on to the championship. We'll talk about it here. So Georgia's favored by 2.5. Over under. I just had this written down. It was like 52, I believe. I'll let you start. Thoughts? Just give your thoughts for now, and then we'll give our picks at the end.
Okay, I got really a couple places I want to go here. I guess I'll start with the number one run defense in the country is Wisconsin. Number 2 is Alabama, and then number 3 is Georgia. Now that's updated past the playoff games and all. But what's interesting to me about that is which of these teams would you say is going to rely more heavily on their running game? The answer is Georgia. I don't think anybody's really going to fight with you about that. No. And they're actually going up against the run defense that just numbers-wise, I'm not talking talent, just talking numbers, has performed even better than Georgia has this season. And then you add into that, I talked about this a little bit last week, Georgia just doesn't have any speed on the perimeter. They really don't have any explosive playmakers outside of Brock Bowers, who, as great as he is still just a tight end. So the one relief for the Georgia fans is on the flip side of that coin. I kind of feel the same way about Alabama right now. And they have Jamison Williams, who's incredible. But now John Mechie's hurt. And after that, you've got solid options. You've got Slay Bolden. You've got Jaleel Billingsley. I think JoJo Earl's healthy. I'm pretty sure. But I feel like he's always hurt. So,
I just saw his name somewhere. I'll try and find it. Sorry.
So they definitely have options, but they've got a lot of possession type receivers and things like that. So I'm going to end there. I was about to give my pick. You don't want me to do that, so you go ahead.
I unfortunately think this is going to be a very boring game. I don't think there's going to be a ton of scoring. And obviously, for anyone out there, I want it to be a good game. I just want it to be a good game. Going into the fourth quarter, I want it to be a good game. But Georgia dominated everyone this year. They just dominated them this year. But I'm not necessarily sold, I don't think, just because you're right. I mean, outside of their running game, what's his name? Who's the receiver that's back?
For which team?
Georgia.
Pickens? Yes,
Pickens. But he's not fully back. He's I feel like on the goal line they might put him in to go up for a fade or something. So it's scary to me that if their running game just doesn't work, Stetson Bennett is not a quarterback that can do it by himself. And if he turns out to be, then you know what? Hey, we were all wrong. Everyone was wrong. So that's fine. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I just think I kind of am going with you. I think Alabama's going to be able to stop Georgia's run. I think Georgia will be able to, for the most part, stop Alabama. But I feel like there's going to be, maybe 1 or 2 huge plays in momentum at some point. And I like I said, I just hope it's an exciting game. There are exciting players on the field. James Williams is exciting. Nakobe Dean is exciting as a defensive player as they come. So yeah, we'll give our picks at the end. But yeah, I'm more. I just think I have more faith in Alabama. You know what? I'll put it this way: I have more faith in the Heisman Trophy winner than I do in Stetson Bennett. I guess I'll say that before we get to our picks. But
while we are on that, just really briefly, I do want to say to all the Georgia fans, if you lose this game, all I'm going to want to do is just grab you by the shirt and shake you, and I'm going to scream at you, and I'm going to say, JT Daniels would not have won you that game.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's
already
good.
kind of ready to hear
my
it,
God.
and I don't want to hear it. Stetson Bennett gives them the best chance, hands down.
I agree with you right now. Going into the semifinals, I was kind of 50-50. But yes, that is – well, I almost feel bad for Kirby Smart going into this. If he loses, he's going to get crucified for not playing JT Daniels. And you're right. Everyone's going to be like, JT Daniels plays, we win by 2 touchdowns. And you're 100% right because that's what they will say. But it's not true because JT Bennett has now been at USC and Georgia. He was at each place for 2 years, and he couldn't find the field. Like, maybe JT Daniels just isn't as good as everyone thinks he is. Mm-hmm. So,
I don't know. These Georgia-Alabama games, weird knack with backup quarterbacks. So I really don't want to count anything out.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder who's Alabama's backup?
I don't even know. For like the first time ever, I don't know.
Oh,
they've got
okay.
Ty Simpson coming in next year, right?
Yeah, he's one of the southern states. Yeah. Okay. So before we get our predictions, I did think of this earlier. And you're the best person to talk about this because you live in Florida and things like that. Who, for the entire college football landscape, just as a whole, who's it better? Like, who needs it more? Is it better if Georgia wins or is it better if Alabama wins? And I am only saying this to this point because people are like Bama fatigue and things like that. But there is also a real part of that it's almost like, all right, Nick, like you've had fun for 20 years. Like, I think we need someone to knock them off the throne. That's just my opinion. But I've seen a lot around this week that people are like, yeah, it's great for Nick Saban and it's been great. And but at some point, someone else needs to win. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do believe that most likely nobody really will. But nonetheless, I feel as if Georgia winning this title as a kind of solution to some of the Bama fatigue is going to be very temporary because what we're going to see then in 3 years, I understand Georgia hasn't won a national championship in over 40 years, and it would be incredible for all the people in Georgia, and it's not going to be at least Bama or Clemson this year. And I do understand all of that. But that means that, if you go down the road a year or 2 years, well, now we're talking about the SEC having champions in LSU, Georgia, and Alabama, all within the last several years. On top of that, adding in Texas and Oklahoma. So while it may temporarily sort of subside some of that Bama fatigue, we are going to get an immense amount of kind of that SEC fatigue. Yeah,
and I think that if you think that because this isn't necessarily how I feel, and I know I'm just saying you as the listener, like if you feel like Alabama, like someone else needs to win at this point, all you got to do right now is look at their roster and realize that the best defensive player in the country will be back next year, and Bryce Young will be back next year. Because I don't think Will Anderson can't go pro, can he? I think he's still too young.
I think so too, yeah.
So that's all you do. Like, it's not ending. Because I see people out there that are like, if Georgia wins, it's kind of like pushing the boulder over the ledge. They finally did it. No. Like, these guys are not like this isn't this is Alabama. This isn't like Nebraska where you come and go from seasons. Like, no, they're going to be good and probably actually better than they are this year, next year. So yeah. And coming from the North and this, like, just kind of how I feel about it, it really doesn't matter. Like, to me, I just want to see a game, but it doesn't matter. To me, it's just 2 SEC teams, so it doesn't really matter who wins. It's the SEC again. So,
well, I heard it said really well earlier this week on the Late Kick, and he said, this Alabama team is going to keep getting better. Georgia, now's your chance to clip them. We're going to be sick of Bryce Young eventually. We're going to be sick of Will Anderson eventually because those guys are going to be at the top of this sport now for a good bit, but this is Georgia's chance. Clip them.
We'll obviously do our, college, the championship recap and stuff next week, but like I'm thinking about it right now, like next year going into the year, like Bama could have both of the favorites for the Heisman could be on Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, and I think this for Will Anderson, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting off topic, but I think this about Will Anderson almost like it's Cincinnati. Like I think Cincinnati still gets in the tournament this year, even if Oklahoma State wins, just because Cincinnati was up there already the year before, and they were up at the top all year. I think Will Anderson is going to go into the season as like a top five, top 4, top 3 Heisman candidate, and you'll have staying power in the fact, and then it might be good for the Heisman because you'll have like a guy that just doesn't come out of nowhere. That's just a defensive one of a kind thing. So, I mean, we're going to get Will Anderson next year. And like I said, like it would not surprise me if the 2 Heisman favorites going into next year were both on Alabama's roster. So, yeah, it's like I said, to me, it really doesn't matter. It's both the SEC, and all I really want is a good game. We've had a I mean, if we're being honest, we've had some of the recent games have been all right. We didn't have a great bowl season. There weren't a ton of great, at least in my opinion, I didn't think so. Yeah, all right. And before we get off and give our picks, FCS Championship Saturday at noon. Some new blood. It's North Dakota State, not new blood. They're playing Montana State, who is this is their first year back. They had the whole year off last year. They didn't play in spring ball. I think North Dakota State's favored by about 8. And I would love to sit here and say that North Dakota State's going to lose, but they're not. They're going to win again. So I mean, you can bet on Montana State if you want. North Dakota State's going to win again. Like people want to talk about Alabama and Alabama fatigue, and the only reason I have interest in the FCS is my brother went to James Madison, and I covered it all last spring. Like Alabama isn't on the level yet of North Dakota State where they win literally every single year. And I just don't like North Dakota State. But, hey, maybe they'll lose. All right, so our picks for the championship, I think Matt is taking Georgia -3. I have it right now at 2.5. It's on ESPN at 2.5. So we'll go off that. We're going to go off 2.5. And then the over-under is 52. Just whatever you're thinking, your picks are, I mean, you have to give a pick, but just how you think the game plays out.
How do I think this game plays out? That's actually a great question because I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see a lot of points scored. I think we're going to see 2 smarter defenses than we saw the last time around. That being said, going back to what I was talking about earlier with Georgia relying on their run game and Alabama really being able to shut that down effectively, I'm going to say Alabama, if I were to give you a score prediction, like 24-10 this time around. So
all right.
I would take Bama plus 2.5, and I would take under 52.5.
Under 52. All right. Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page. I think we were kind of on the same page for the first couple games. It stinks for Kirby Smart, but I at this point, like when people like talk about it and like it used to be a joke now, I think it's a real thing right now that Kirby Smart gets on the sideline and he's like the coach from Waterboy that sees the other guy on the sideline and just like freaks out. So I agree. I'm taking Bama plus 2.5. I would also take the under, but I would probably put the score at I like 24, probably 24-13. 24-13. I'll take that one. But Bama plus 2. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it for our college football playoff championship. We'll be back next week. Hopefully Matt's feeling better. I think he said he was already feeling a little bit better yesterday. So we'll hopefully have him back next week. We'll give out some of our season ending awards. With Matt being back, we'll obviously get into a little about the draft. We'll obviously recap everything that happens on Monday night. But we're both on the same page. I think Alabama wins again, which I don't know why. Like, I didn't realize it, but it's back-to-back for Alabama if they win it. And I don't know why I didn't realize it, but it is.
Well, and they'll be favorites to win the national championship next year, almost certainly.
They might. I wonder. Like, I'll look at it. We'll look at it when it comes out next year. But they've got to have some of the highest odds to win the championship ever from the season before. But all right. Well, Matthew, I hope you had a great holiday break. And I hope the weather. How's the weather down there?
It's getting a little colder. It's down to like 75.
You suck. You suck. Actually, it's just cold now and not rainy, but we do have snow. We got about 2 or 3 inches of snow. So as long as it stays like this, I just normally stay inside. I don't survive in the cold. But that'll do it. We'll be back next week. Check us out. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, basically anywhere you get your listening material. It's all there. All right, Matthew, any last words, man?
Scared money don't make money. Go Gators.
Let's rock.